Dingle bells, dingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to see the Reading get away with it for another year and depart 2022 somehow in considerably stronger shape than we all thought we would be when the clock struck midnight on December 31st. Welcome and season's greetings to the Tilehurst podcast, episode 319. I'm your host, Marc Mayo, joining you for our Christmas special. It's been a hell of a year for Reading FC. There is very rarely a boring year, even calendar-wise, of course, as we approach the end of 2022. And we're here to talk about the 49 games that Reading have played so far this season. And, the record isn't great, let's say it that way, but it could have been a hell of a lot worse. So we'll have the recap coming up in a bit and some awards to hand out. Doing that with me is the veteran of Tilehurst podcast and Reading FC podcasting, Alan West. Westy, we're just talking off air about how it all began and our trips to the pub and everything to do the Christmas awards. Sadly, we're on Zoom tonight, but still great to have you on.
Yeah, it's new times, but at least I've moved with them, which is nice.
Yeah, that's difficult to do. It's not the easiest said than done.
It's very difficult to do, I must admit.
But it does mean that we're able to be joined by someone from the other side of the pond, or at least I think that's where you are at the moment. Ross Webber, one of the Tilehurst writers who's been joining us actually more frequently on the podcast this year. It's great to have you on and hope you're doing well.
Yeah, doing great. Thanks, Mark. Happy to be here. Definitely still on this side of the pond. I wouldn't try traveling around the holiday period. Of course, we've got Thanksgiving a few weeks ago as well. So the whole country basically just sort of slows down for about a month over here.
Oh, that's good. Well, certainly, as you probably well know, in the UK, this is the time of year when everyone manically tries to get to a different part of the country and then finally gets a chance to stop, which actually I've been doing today, funnily enough. So, which is, as always, good for the Christmas period. We'll be getting into the recap of 2022 in just a second. Before that, as always, a thanks to our sponsors, ZCZ Films, and our Patreon subscribers, putting some cash in the virtual tip jar, which we're always trying to put to good use and bring a better show, better blog, obviously, with the website as well. Always looking into ways to improve our quality with that. So without any further ado, let's get into the recap of 2022.
Come rain or shine, it's time to relive the latest match action with the recap.
This podcast is sponsored by ZCZ Films, Reading's oldest ultras.
So, Westy, if I'd have offered you at the start of the year a record, and obviously 2022 isn't over yet, so it's not quite complete, but we've played 49, all competitions, won 15, drawn 7, and lost 27 games in 2022. That's over half of the games we've played we've lost, and yet we finished 2 points off the playoffs. As a record, would you have taken that at the start of the year, and what division do you think we'd have been in at the end of it?
Well, let's face it, it's a borderline miracle. We're still talking about championship football, and I think we said it on the pod, sort of certainly the back end of last season, that how we stayed up is beyond our wildest dreams, considering the amount of points we didn't get. Looking at that record, even having 7 draws is a near miracle. I mean, the amount of games, considering every game starts a draw, you'd expect a few more than that. But I think we can all look at the losses and say that's far too many. But on the flip side, it's been a roller coaster ride as usual, but as you said at the start of the show, we've just about scraped our head above water, and we're sort of pushing slightly in the right direction, but in Reading's normal way, it's sort of a little bit there and a little bit not there. And I think there's lots of twists and turns to come. But to answer your question, I think we're just lucky to be talking about championship football still.
Yeah, for sure. With let's go through the year then, and it started basically as bad as it possibly could have, with a 2-1 defeat to Kidderminster in the FA Cup. Just in case anyone had repressed that memory, thought we'd bring that one back up. Although another favourably repressed memory is our 7-0 defeat to Fulham, which we had in January as well. We then lost to Middlesbrough in the last minute, having led that. I think 84 minutes in, we were 1-0 up in that, lost 2-1. Andy Carroll left, of course, having scored that Middlesbrough goal and, seemingly being someone who could help us with our relegation battle. Liam Moore was stripped of his captaincy in January, which actually today, the 21st of December, he was back in training for Reading. So that's been an almost perfect circle that we're approaching with that one. A bit of a brief respite we had with, I remember the attacking intent was kind of brought forward with our 3-4 defeat to Huddersfield, George Puskas scoring in that, and then all that brief respite was brought down to earth with a 4-0 defeat to QPR. Now, we're not going to go through every single game and result with as much detail, but Ross, as a month, that's like a whole season's worth of crap, isn't it, basically?
Yeah, that wasn't the most fun time to be a Reading fan. I remember predicting earlier in the season that I was like, oh, we should keep Pauno because it's not like we're going to lose 10 games in a row. And then I think we got to 8 games in a row by that stretch, and I'd certainly changed my tune. So that was probably January 2022, the most convinced I've been that we were going to get relegated at any point in the last 5 years. Even through all of the previous relegation battles, it felt like there was still some spirit in the club, or at least if there wasn't spirit, there was a little bit of money knocking around to be able to bring in a manager, a player or something who might be able to make a difference or something like that. But especially when I was thinking back, comparing it to the Jose Gomez second half of the season, where we brought in Ajaria, Emi Martinez, who's just won a World Cup, and all those great players. Comparing it to that made me really worried that we were going down, because it really felt like the spirit had been knocked out of the club. So very happy to be sitting here, 12 months later, 2 points off the playoffs. Football, things change quickly in football, don't they?
They did. I remember at the time the anti-Paunovic chants and everything started coming, and I think I was probably a little bit behind. I mean, some people want the next manager after Paul Ince to be sacked already, don't they? So some people are always ahead of the curve with wanting people to be sacked. But I think I was a little bit behind a lot of people in terms of the Paunovic stuff. Can't remember exactly when I did turn. I think it was the Kidderminster game for me, Westy, and the real fan discontent, and Ross says the word spirit there, and the spirit in the fans have been really kicked over this January. I don't know if you call it kind of the worst month. Obviously, we've had relegations and stuff, but the worst month of supporting Reading, or near enough one of the worst months. And Paunovic really was, well, he's long outstayed his welcome, hadn't he?
Yeah, he had. I mean, I've been coming to watch Reading since 1985, so I've seen a few bad months, so I can say that for certain. The worst thing about that month in particular, and the Kidderminster game, was I don't think anyone was shocked that they beat us, and that was probably the worst feeling of all, because we went to that game and it looked like it was going to be a banana skin, and it ended up being Reading doing what they've done do regularly at the moment, is kind of shoot himself in the foot with either poor play, bad goalkeeping, or just some random mistake that ended up costing them the game. But like I said, I don't think anyone was shocked at that defeat. And I don't think anyone was shocked at the 7-0 beating from Fulham afterwards either. And that was sort of the end of Paunovic. But I will say that I think that as a fan base, I think we're good fans for a manager, because Gomez, Paunovic, they got a lot of time more than a lot of other clubs would have given them. Whether it's based on their personalities and the fact they were liked, up for debate, but their results didn't warrant our support, if that makes sense. And they certainly got a long time to be useless, really.
I think you're right, because I think that a lot of what was frustrating with Paunovic is that we were watching other clubs around the division go on a 4 or 5 game losing streak and then sack their manager. And obviously there were financial considerations for us, but we were watching 6 or 7 defeats in a row. And it because of the way the communication was this time last year, we just had no sense that anything was moving to actually improve things. So yeah, it was a really tricky situation.
Well, that led to, and you say about the fan patience, when it went big time, and there were the fan protests before the Coventry game, which was the 150th anniversary game, although that was meant to be the Luton game, but then that got cancelled for COVID, so that was just another kind of shambles, although I guess the club wasn't necessarily responsible for that one. So there was the Coventry protest, and then there was the Peterborough protest after the 0-0 draw. I was at the Peterborough game, not the Coventry game, and I remember waiting around, not necessarily out of anger or anything, more just to see if anything was going to happen in terms of, I remember Andy Yeardom coming over to fans outside the bus at Peterborough, kind of explaining as much as he could really about what the players thought, and kind of being diplomatic in that sense. It was a really strange time, Westy. I remember writing an article at the time because certain fans wanted a real overhaul, and I was in the camp that let's wait for the summer for the overhaul and let's just get Paunovic out and just focus on survival. Let's not, run before we can walk, sort of thing. So, what did you think the process made much difference in terms of Paunovic and everything? Do you think that there was a kind of tangible effect that they maybe made?
Yeah, I think they did. I think any sort of fan protest, it rocks the boat a little bit. And obviously at the time, the Chinese contingent weren't there very often. And I think it was just trying to make sure that they'd heard that we were discontent with what was going on. I mean, to a certain extent, we had our hands tied, but I still say to this day, we had then a decent side, a good 11, 12, 13 players that shouldn't have been struggling like that. But I will say that I thought Andy Yidam at that point, I thought he really stepped up. I thought his performances were very good. And at least he was brave enough to come over and say, look, I care. I want to do better for this club. And I thought that what he done on that day really sort of tipped the balance in between the fans really getting on the players back and actually thinking, look, we've got a couple of players there that I think we can rely on. And I think that what he did on that day, coming off the bus and talking to people, took a lot of bravery and fair play to him. I'm not saying his performances were good around there, and he always gives you 100% anyhow, and I think any fan can appreciate that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think not that he had, obviously he'd already been a captain at Charlton, but that was when he started to really show that he was the clear successor to Liam Moore for me when he came out then. Because I mean, obviously, like, nobody goes into that sort of situation thinking dangerously, but you never know what's going to happen when you confront people who are frustrated, who are angry. I think something clearly got through to Dai Young in January or February, whenever that was. And it may well have been Andy Yiadom and putting himself out there and realizing that, he couldn't be putting his players, his employees in that kind of position.
Yeah, I think that the point you make about the side as well, it felt different to when we were frustrated with the Yap Stam team, and I think the Paul Clement team as well, and actually the Jose Gomez team as well, funny enough, because those teams, I think we were really frustrated with the players thinking, you're ultimately kind of holding things back, whereas actually it really felt like we were all kind of united thinking that the manager was the thing that holding everything back. It led to a very interesting situation where Paunovic had been told he'd been sacked. I think this is how it happened before the Preston game. We then won that game, ending this massive losing streak, although I think we did try really hard not to win it, having been 3-0 up and conceded 2 late goals. Of course, then the exit was announced immediately after the game, which really summed up the kind of turmoil at the top of the club for Reading, and also amongst the fan base, because we were that split the fan base completely. Some saying, why is he gone now? We've finally won a game. Some people saying, let him go, but announce it before the game or after, 3 days later, sort of thing. Nobody could really agree on the best way to go about that. And I think ultimately, then things got even more interesting when Paul Ince was introduced as our manager, and this really got the wider footballing attention, didn't it, Westy? Because Paul Ince had, lest we forget, as if anyone never reminds us, that he'd had 8 years out of the game. He was a very good player. No, make no doubt about it. He's, don't need to go into. Everyone knows what Paul Ince did, England, Inter Milan, etc., etc. But wasn't necessarily someone brought back as perhaps a lot of fans felt that he wasn't a modern manager in a sense. He is very old school at the end of the day, and I think perhaps that's favoured us in a lot of ways. And while that's not the romantic kind of appointment that people kind of dream of, and ultimately he's ended up staying all through his kind of interim period, now got a contract and everything, it perhaps was the fact that he was quite off the beaten track and hadn't managed for so long that actually maybe favoured him.
Yeah, it was a super random appointment, let's face it. At a time that we'd gone through sort of a couple of foreign managers, tried to move in a different direction. I think, to be fair to him, he came along at a good time because, like I said, we had the side, we had a core of players that were good, especially at that level. And I think we needed to be a bit more pragmatic in the way we played and to win games, not always playing at our best. And I think what he has done for us, he's given us that sort of fight. I mean, we were conceding goals ridiculously for 2 seasons, and defensively we were all over the place. So he stopped that relatively quickly. He's been backed to a certain extent with the fact that we've got some very good players, I think, at this level. And what he has done, he's brought us a sort of an older fashioned sort of championship football style that has made us relatively successful under the constraints that we had as a club. I think when everyone's been moving away from sort of your old 90s Man United player, your Bruces and your Hugheses, we sort of moved back to it. So it was a random appointment. But I think all in all, I mean, it's not a 10 out of 10. It's not a 3 out of 10. We're sort of sat on sort of 5.5, 6, aren't we? Which is it was enough to stem the flow of what was looking like a disaster.
Yeah, Ince actually lost 3 of his first 4 games, conceding 4 twice. And, you know, anyone who watched the Birmingham game on Friday night will know that we still have it in us to have that collapse, even if it's rarer than previously. But you know, something did change, didn't it, Ross? We did get better fundamentally, and that's what kept us up. And what do you think it was? Do you think it was was it the defensive solidity improved? Was it just was it a mental thing, actually?
I think a lot of it was mental. I think that Ince has shown us that he's shown us a little bit more tactically this season, obviously going to the 3 at the back. And, there are some interesting ideas in his play with the low block and the attempts to play on the transition. But I think that the thing that Ince is really good at is managing the morale of a dressing room, and sometimes I don't think Ince cares about having tricky conversations with anybody. He's the governor, and I think that he brings some of that authority from his stints with England, from his stints, in Serie A and the Premier League, all these things. People do want to listen to him to a degree, even if us watching from the outside might think he hasn't managed in a while. I think that players are simpler creatures sometimes, and we forget that they're people. If you can get the people side of things right, they can bring out their best performances. And Ince just undoubtedly has gotten that right, where Paunovic wasn't getting that right. I think Paunovic wasn't really talking to some people towards the end of his tenure. At least those are some of the rumors. I don't know if that's true, but I think that Ince just immediately started excluding those in the lineup that he didn't feel were committed to the mental side of the game, to keeping Reading up, and then having Tom around to sort of instill that in the changing room, almost like having an extra coach for him there. I think that was really useful. So I think that getting his own son on side with what he was trying to do, and then sort of just taking that bedrock and running with it to really push the mental toughness as an important thing for this group.
Do you know what? You bang on there, Ross. What Ince has done is, like you said, everyone knows who Ince is. And if you look at players that become managers, I was watching Steve Coppell play for Manchester United the other day in a game from the early 80s, late 70s. And Coppell was a winger. And if you watched his side, the 106 team, it was get it wide, get it in the box. So they played with a winger, a manager who was a winger. With Paul Ince was all about cut and thrust. He demands everyone around him to do what he does. You know what I mean? Shut people down, put in big tackles, have a bit of quality on the ball. And like you said, with his son coming in, and he's obviously had that instilled in him since he was a boy, it becomes infectious. And if you're not doing it, like your Ajarias and now your Jowls, who's sort of been excluded from the starting 11 quite a lot, if you're not doing it, then you're out of the side. And I think that demand and them standards have been set, whereas before, I don't think there was that, and there wasn't I can't even look up to you as a player because I don't really know who you are. I know Paunovic had a good career as a footballer, but the young lads won't have known or seen him too much. Yeah. And I think Ince has got that sort of aura about him where he played for England, he's played at the top level. I can only aspire to get to that level, but let me try. And I think that's what he's done. And some players have slipping away, but you get the ones that step up to the plate. And his son has been immense in that happening around the club, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Reading had the late heroics, Tom McIntyre with goals late on against Sheffield United and Swansea, which I'm not sure I would say they kept us up, because Reading weren't naturally hugely close to the Championship drop zone in the end on the final day and everything. And we did lose 3 games, having, effectively secured our survival and everything. So it's actually a little bit of I'm tempted to say comfortable end to the season, all things considered, with that, the later with the points that we picked up quite late on in the season. So we also then had the Orient Island calamity on the final day, which I will be talking about in the awards ceremony. I have no doubt about that. So then we get into the summer, and as we all knew, there was going to be the exodus, and John Swift, Morrison, Laurent, Rinomhota, Halilovic, McNulty, Barker, Thomas, Aruna, Nyland, Ashcroft, Bristow, and Samuels, all of which have made first team appearances, I think, left for free. So that's a big hole in, a lot of situations, really. And we'll talk a bit later on because we have the award for the most missed player. So we'll talk about any of those that we kind of feel like we're maybe missing now. But in replacement, the usual bunch of try lists. I don't think any of the try lists that we didn't take have, gone on to anything special. And then we've had the likes of Hutchinson, Long, Ince signed permanently. How do we think, Ross, do you think those guys have changed the kind of dynamic of the team? Was it, with hindsight, a really successful summer window? Any kind of flops or massive gold nuggets we found there?
I think a successful window overall. I think that ahead of that, like even more importantly, just putting the upper management group together of Mark Bowen, and then him bringing Paul Carey in, and I believe that there's some more shuffling going on in that sort of area at the moment. So I think that getting that right, first of all, really it kind of made the fans take a step back and calm down a little bit, because it seemed like correct football moves were happening. And then with these guys coming in, and Benge's been awesome, obviously. I think Hutchinson has given us everything that Michael Morrison did over the last couple of years so far. I'd like to obviously see it over a longer period of time, but he's made Morrison's absence less of a problem. That was one I was a little bit worried about. And then, bringing Long in, it's bringing in players who, I think I said this on a previous podcast, who are all mentality monsters, to use Klopp's phrase. But also, bringing in a guy like Long, they know what they're doing. They're getting the fans on side. A player who can certainly still do a job in the championship, but not one that would necessarily be pushing into our first 11 if we were a playoff team. So I think that there are a bunch of players who have come in, been willing to buy into Ince's, mentality, for lack of a better term. And yeah, I think that's really just helped us to go on these little runs every now and again and just pick up the points that we need to have what has been a fairly comfortable season so far.
Yeah, why has it been so comfortable, Westy? You look at the championship, and it's been a bit of an unusual year and a bit of a mishmash and everything, but is there any kind of component that Reading have done really well this year or capitalised on? I think goals at key times is something I'd say. We've scored quite often early in second halves and stuff, and I think if you look back at that Millwall away game, for example, we scored quite early and then we're able to sit in. Think of the Blackburn home game when we scored relatively early on, then again quite early on in the second half. We've had the odd collapse still, but we've been relatively well organised and motivated, like we've been speaking about. Is there anything that we've kind of really nailed this year that is why we're so high up the table?
No, I don't think we've nailed anything. I think we're the epitome of a championship football side that will go on a run of 2 or 3 games and then lose 3 or 4 and then take the odd beating and then win a random game 3-0 that you didn't see coming. I think we're all over the place with our results. I think, just going back to the point that Ross was making there, I think when he's talking about just something like a Coppell's team and now Ince's team, Ince has signed players that are like Ince. When Hutchinson plays, I think Reading are a better team. We knew that his injury record wasn't great, and we probably won't have him for maybe 25 games a season. But when he's in the side, I think he makes Reading a better team because he's a leader on the pitch. His son's a leader on the pitch, and I think that's what we've got now. We've got players that are leaders on the pitch. You've got your hearts and minds type players like your Longs, and you've got your 2 local lads that play at the back there. That's good for the fans, like Ross alluded to. And I think, again, Long's a very similar style type player. He gives you everything he's got. And I think we've been lacking that in seasons where you don't see players giving you everything, just leaving their hearts on the field. Whereas now I think Ince has tapped into the fact that he needed players that were experienced, that have played a bit, have played at a higher level, and bring a little bit more quality leadership and effort into a side that on occasions would collapse once they went 1-0 down. So that's what if he's done anything, I think that's what they've done as a collective. And I think, like you said, Bowen coming back as well. Just the organisation around the club felt a little bit disjointed, where it feels a lot better now. The communication's back and you feel a bit more part of it because of that.
I had something about the tactical sort of purchases that have been made. I think I've been thinking about this a lot because the World Cup's just happened, and there are a lot of teams, especially the European teams, that set up like this. We hear game state talked about more and more now as an important thing within football. A lot of teams try and force a certain game state early. So England, for instance, like to attack early in halves. They really go at teams for the first 15 minutes or so, and then in the last 5 minutes of a half, and then they'll sort of back off in that middle part because they're built to play with a lead or built to play from a draw. I think that a lot of the players that Reading have brought in are of a similar mentality. We sort of sit in this low block. We try and go forward quickly in transition moments, possibly because we're missing that sort of creative player through the middle at the moment. But I think that a lot of these players, Naby Sarr, Mbengue, Hutchinson, Long, when you're chasing a game, they are a nightmare to have to deal with. If you're a defender and your team is 1 or 2-0 down, you're just trying to get it up the field, and Shane Long is chasing you down, that is a pain in the neck to deal with over and over again. Whereas if you're winning and Shane Long chases you down, just pass it back to your goalkeeper, just pass it around the back or do whatever you want. So I think that if there's any sort of tactical thing beyond the mentality that Reading are trying to do, they're trying to bring in players who are just no fun to play against when they have the lead.
Yeah, yes. Definitely. And I think for this season more than any, if you look at our attacking options, all of them are very different players. I think we still lack that pace over the top, which we miss, which means we're a bit condensed sometimes. If you play Carroll up front, you start Carroll, he's not going to run in behind. So sometimes it makes it a little bit easier. He's good in the air, but then you have to have some run off of him. But I think if you look at Long, Meite, Zhao, Carroll and Ince, when they play forward, they're all very different problems for you. And I think we've lacked that down the years as well.
Yeah, Reading have picked up a couple of wins from behind this year, Cardiff and Hull, or this half of the season, I should say. But yeah, it's been a case. I think it's been a case for a long time with Reading teams that coming from behind isn't too easy, but defending leads isn't actually that difficult for us either. I'm trying to think of times we've actually lost from in front, and there was the QPR game, obviously the Swansea game, but I guess it's a bit of a misnomer, and Burnley we were kind of, well, the less said about that the better, given the penalty decision we had late in the game. So yeah, it's I think looking forward, which we'll do a bit later in the show, it puts Reading in a position to hopefully just kind of maintain as a really, I say steady, but we're going to be a bit of a streaky team, aren't we? Maintain that mid-table position and see what happens, really. So long, I mean, we currently have 2 games left. We're 2 points off the playoffs, and we are 8 points clear of the relegation zone, which is, I think that buffer has extended since we've, with one win, we pulled away from that since the season has restarted. So we're doing all right in that respect, and I think ultimately every fan will know that staying up this year is always the first goal. Anything else is a big bonus, and Reading are fulfilling that. So that is 2022. We'll obviously have more to say on that in the last couple of games, but for now we're going to go into the award show, hand out some final awards for 2022.
For all the latest Reading news, analysis and opinion, visit the website at thetilehurstend.com.
So welcome back to the Tilehurst End podcast and the 2022 awards. We have been doing this since 2013, actually. So I guess, it's a bit of a landmark awards for us to be getting all this way, and still we haven't had a public complaint from Hal Hobson-Kanu that we have the Hal Hobson-Kanu Underachiever Award coming up. Although his punditry career is certainly overachieving, so fair enough to him for that, for righting those wrongs. Right then, we've got all kinds of things coming up: the Breakout Player Award, Worst Moment, Golden Moment, Comedy Moment, and more. It all starts with the Player of the Year, the 2022 Best Player for Reading FC. Previous winners include Alex McCarthy, we've had Jordan Abita, Oliver Norwood, Al Habsi, Liam Moore, John Daddy Bodvarsson won it in a particularly down year, I think it's fair to say. Ovie Ejaria, Michael Morrison, and John Swift is the reigning champion. Obviously can't defend that crown. No one's ever defended this crown, funnily enough. So we've had already some nominations. Simeon Pickup, Adam Jones, Ben Thomas, and Ollie Allen. All of if you listen to the Tilehurst podcast and read the blog, you'll be familiar with those names. Have all sent me in their nominations, and they have all voted for Tom Ince, which, Westy, I think is a pretty clear sign that there might be a winner here. Are you going for Ince yourself, or?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's, again, what we said already about going back over it again. I think he's been, since he's come here, I mean, you speak to other fans at clubs he's played for and they can't believe the performances he's putting in for Reading. So if it's because of his dad, and I think that might have a big deciding factor in it. But like we said, he sets the tone for the whole side, and even on the pitch, he makes demands of people. And you never sit back at the end of a game and think Tom Ince doesn't give you everything he's got. And I think if you look at the names you just read out, apart from the goalkeepers who were excellent, and normally if goalkeeper gets player of the year, apart from Shaka is like back in the day, it means you had a bad season. But I think Tom Ince sets the tone. I think he has been excellent since he's joined us. And I must admit, when he first came to the club, I thought, why are we signing him? He's sliding down the leagues rather than moving up them. I thought he was very one-footed. I still think that, actually, but you can't ever knock the effort he puts in. And he has not just the effort he puts in, he affects the game both sides of the pitch, defensively and in attack. And there's not many players you see in modern day football that do that. You're either a defender or you're an attacker, and he sits in that perfect middle ground where he's useful in both areas. So I think Tom Ince can play anywhere, and he'd still be, 7, 8, 9 out of 10 every week.
Yeah, I think that it's that work rate that's really surprised me with him. Yes, I knew he could hit a free kick when he signed for us. I knew he could cut inside and be a threat and everything. But the fact that he just works so hard off the ball and is defensively, as you say, so important to the team. And when he's not there, you really realise it as well. So I'm definitely voting for Tom Ince. Ross, are you going to throw in any curveballs?
I wish that I could add something else to this, but I think that the unanimity of it just speaks to how good of a year he's had. I think that maybe one of the other Toms might sneak in there for me for just the moments they've given us this year, and the fact that Tom Holmes and Tom McIntyre, two guys, who grew up in the academy, who watched the 106 team, the fact that they are affecting our games to the degree that they are, I think that's awesome. But yeah, it would be a bold man to claim that anybody other than Tom Ince has been the player of the year. As you just put it, I can't imagine a starting 11 that I would feel confident of winning a game that doesn't include Tom Ince in it right now. So yeah, he has to be the player of the year so far.
Well, congratulations then, Tom Ince. You are the 2022 Tilehurst End Player of the Year. Contact John Swift to collect your trophy. He's probably somewhere in the Midlands right now, if we ever sent him one. Right there, Most Improved Player is next up. We've already had some nominations for Joe Lumley, Tom Holmes. Nesta Guinness-Walker is an interesting shout from Ollie. I am going to phone the first candidate for this one. I'm going to say Junior Hoylett is my pick for Most Improved Player. A player who, over the start of the year and the start of his Reading tenure, was just kind of there or thereabouts, a bit of a winger, a bit of, did bits and bobs, and I wouldn't say really wowed anyone. But then in the second half of the year, he's improved massively, in my opinion, because his integrity to the team has just been elevated massively by the fact that he's playing at wing back, both flanks, defends, attacks, does just a really good professional job, which Reading badly needed at the start of the year, and I think he's filled that in very well. And he's not been outstanding or anything, but as a most improved player, that's who I'm going to go for. Ross, who are you picking for most improved player?
So I'm going to go with Tom Holmes. I love both of the Academy Toms. I think that McIntyre is probably at the start of this year a slightly better player than Holmes, and at this point I think it might be the other way around. Holmes has really grown up this year. He's obviously been through a tricky situation with the Reading, just with Reading over the last year, and having to go through the Payne and the Paunovic situation, and the missing out on the playoffs the season before. He is just a solid championship operator at this point. I think that he still benefits from having somebody a little bit more experienced alongside him, but it's getting to the point where Holmes is the experienced player alongside others in the defense. So, yeah, for me, it's Tom Holmes.
Westy, who are you going for?
Yeah, I've gone for Junior Hoylett as well. I didn't think I'd probably say these words, but to say he's most improved is kind of degrading to a player that's obviously played a lot of Premier League football. But like you said, he's been asked to operate in a role that I wasn't sure he could play in. And I just think he's a model professional. I think if you look at when he plays for Canada, he's really highly thought of in the Canadian side. Yeah. They've got a lot of respect for him. And I think if you see how he plays for Reading, I think he gives you all he's got. Well, he's another player, and being asked to play out of position and being good in that position and being first choice really in that position is testament to his professionalism. So it kind of reminds me of a few years back, going back to Coppell again, of when Ulysses De La Cruz came to this side, and he didn't play that often. But when he did, you could see that he was a good player, and I think he fits that sort of mould where he gives you everything he's got, and he's got a bit of quality to go with it. So yeah, definitely Junior Hoylett for me.
Oh, I loved Ulysses De La Cruz. I really enjoyed watching him. He was a Rolls-Royce right back, wasn't he? Even if he wasn't necessarily able to play more than maybe 10 games a season. So that actually means with 3 votes for Tom Holmes, because Sim and Adam both backed him, he is the official Tyler said most improved player of 2022. A word of caution, however, it doesn't always mean that he's going to do well, because it turned into a bit of a poison chalice in previous years. Obita, Cooper, Nick Blackman won it in 2015, and well, I don't think he was very good after that. Gareth McCleary won it. Liam Kelly won it before he completely dropped off. Yaku Mate before he didn't have he did all right the year after. John Swift, Omar Richards, and Luke Southwood was last year's most improved player. And if you add the least improved player, he might be up for that this year. So let's go on to the Hal Robson-Kanu Underachiever Award. For fans who don't remember Hal Robson-Kanu so much, he won the award in 13 and 14 purely as a player who had bags of talent, really highly regarded. But Hal Robson-Kanu is one of those players who there is no reason that we shouldn't love him as Reading fans. Academy player, won the championship, did well in the Premier League and everything. And yet there is just something about that underachieving and perhaps going on to other clubs and saving his best football for the Wales team, I think is probably fair to say, that didn't mean we were fully enamored with him as much as we should have. So the previous winners of this award kind of follow the most improved player line in that Obita won it, Cooper won it, Sonia Luko won it twice. Maybe if someone wins it 3 times, they can have it renamed after them. George Puskas has won it, Danny Loader, and Puskas again at last season. So, Westy, I'll give you the first nomination for the Underachiever Award.
Do you know what? It was me who named this the Robson-Kanu Award. Back in the day, I seem to remember. And if you look at the players you just listed, they all fit the same mould, don't they? And I always look forward to this one. It's definitely my favourite. I'm going to go for someone who's a bit left field, because I think I know who's going to win this, but I'm going to go for someone a little bit different, and that's Femi Aziz. And the reason for that is I think that he has got all the talent that you could want to see of a footballer. He started a season before last on fire. We hear that in training he's been on fire, but his injury record is really poor for a player of his age. So my underachiever is Femi Aziz, because I think at this point in his career, he should be first on the team sheet, and he's still not.
Fair point. Well, I've gone for Jeff Hendrick, because when Jeff Hendrick was signed, I thought this is a cracking signing. We've done really well to get a player who fundamentally has spent most of his recent career in the Premier League. I was a little bit tempered when I realised that he had a dodgy loan spell at QPR for the first half of the year, and I thought that's fine. He suits the Paul Ince style. He's from what I've heard, he's a good leader in the dressing room and everything, and I'm no doubt that probably is still the case. But I thought we were getting a really good Championship all-action midfielder in Jeff Hendrick, and I don't think we have actually had that. I think he's been quite lucky to be in the team as often as he is, and maybe it is that leadership and all those abilities that are keeping him there. But just the general defensive and attacking output, I think, is quite low for a player of his standing and ability. So he's my underachiever. of the year, Ross, who are you going to say for the HRK award?
So with that one, I'm also going to go with Hendrick, and so as to not repeat exactly what you just said, I'm going to pose a question to you both, if that's all right. The actually came to me from Sim at the Tilehurst Den, where he sort of posed: would you rather have Jeff Hendrick or second half of the season Danny Drinkwater playing in that position right now? Because Drinkwater got a lot of stick for his for his performances in the first half of last season, but he did improve quite a bit. And I don't know if Hendrick right now is really providing the same sort of creativity, at least, that Drinkwater could provide in the middle of the park. So I'd be interested to get your opinions on that.
Do you know what? I can answer this, and it's a miracle you said this, because I've just written down on my notes Hendrick, and I've put Drinkwater in a circle before you mentioned his name. So must have channeled it across the channel, because I picked up on that. But I would have said definitely 100%. I'd have had the latter part of the season Danny Drinkwater, because I still don't know what Hendrick is as a midfielder. Do you know, I don't get. I think he's a little bit of everything, but not enough of anything, if that makes any sense. Whereas Drinkwater, you knew he had a decent engine on him and he could pick a pass. Whereas Hendrick doesn't seem to be an attacking midfielder. He's not much of a tackler. He's not good on the ball. He runs around and puts in an effort. I'm not saying that, but he doesn't give me something that I can say, oh, that's what he is as a midfielder, because he appears to be a little bit of everything and not enough of the stuff that you need. Whereas Drinkwater, you knew exactly what he was about. And like I said, Drinkwater's played at the top level. And you see that at the back end of last season. Whereas for Hendrick, I don't see anything as a midfielder. Not really.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because as I say, when he came to the club, I thought that he was going to be that engine type, that driver, pick up the ball, run with it, carry it into, good positions, and then just probably play the simple pass, and that'll be that. But yeah, I don't think any of us have seen that, and it's flown a little bit under the radar. It's certainly not been Danny Drinkwater levels of criticism, and not am I saying that I think he should be massively criticised. I'm not condoning the abuse that Drinkwater was getting on a weekly basis, but it does make me feel that, yeah, he does. I do just feel that we should be getting more bang for our buck with Jeff Hendrick. Interestingly, the four guys, Sim, Adam, Ben, and Ollie, all sent in a completely different player to win this Underachiever Award, and that is Ovi Ajaria, who I think probably a lot of listeners were expecting us to say maybe. So we're going to have a chat about him. And Ajaria is just. I know you've described him in the past as a luxury player, Westy, I know, and it feels to me that when he first came to the club, he was a player that we were all excited by, and he was pulling off these tricks, and he had the bit of end product as well. He scored a couple of goals. He was a few really good assists. I remember one at QPR for George Puskas in the Mark Bowen era and stuff like that. There were a number of elements to his game that were good, and yet. I feel like that was a long time ago now that those elements were really in any way prevalent to the way that he performs now. It feels like any attack that gets to Ajaria either plays the simple pass or kind of dies. Defenders know what they're doing against him because you just have to stand off him and wait for him to not particularly do very much. The effort levels, not every player has to run a marathon every game, but he doesn't have that in him. Tracking back as well. And yet this is a player who on the ball and in his end products as well has so much talent, and multiple managers now. I think this is always a good litmus test of player, is that multiple managers have struggled to get something out of him for any long period of time. And we're kind of, I guess we're just a little bit stuck with it now, aren't we, Westy?
Ajaria's career is passing him by, isn't it? He's one of those players that has been given every opportunity to show what he's got. And there's no doubt he's got talent. I mean, I didn't mention him because I knew he'd won it. But I wanted to sort of give a few other options. But with Ajaria, he's got everything you need to be a good footballer. He had his chance at Liverpool. He went to Rangers. They didn't like the looks of him. He's come to us. There's something not right with him. His injury record has been poor as well. But when he comes into the side, even when he was playing well, he has a tendency to keep the ball for way too long, and he slows down play. And I think he gives teams opportunities to get back. I think he likes to take on players. I think he enjoys that more than winning games to a certain extent. But he's not an inch player, is he? Ajaria is not an inch player. He is a luxury player. But I think we all thought that he would take Swift's place. And I think that was up for grabs for him at the start of the season, because he could play in behind the strikers. He could play that Swift role if he really wanted to. but he's been given opportunities. When, like you say, whenever he plays, he doesn't do it. And I think we're seeing less even of his ability now. He's just sort of shrunk into his shell. And I think Ajari's career at Reading is going to be quite short, because I don't think it's going to put up with him for much longer.
Yeah, Ross, the thing I would add quickly is that he's 25 years old.
Yeah.
And he's always been a young player at Reading, but he's not anymore. He should be in his prime.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he really should. And I think it's just disappointing, isn't it, really? Because like Westy's saying, we were all so excited when he first came to us on loan, thought it was a steal, and we got him for 3 million or whatever it was on that contract. Yeah. But that his career is passing him by is very accurate. I think what he's shown me is how much creativity comes from being an intelligent player and somebody who's making their choices, before the ball comes to them, or, they spot space and they plot a plan to get into it and to move the ball with them. I think Ajaria is he's sort of, when he's on form, he's sort of one of these ultimate improvisers, in that he can just feel the game and move through it like that. But that's just not how this side plays. Swift was able to spot when a tempo change would pull a side apart, and I don't trust that Ajaria has that ability. So it's been disappointing, because I really thought at the start of the year that when Swift left, Ajaria would get the chance and the run in the team to play in a more creative role. And at this point, I mean, unless he comes back and he has a January to remember after the January to forget we were talking about earlier, then I think it's just trying to get him in the shop window for a move before his last year of his contract.
Yeah, which, to be honest, I don't really see anyone coming in and signing him. But there we go. Hopefully he proves us wrong. We always want these players to actually, get off their arse and do well. Unfortunately, that list of previous winners is littered with players. I suppose Jake Cooper aside, who's had a very decent career at Millwall. And Danny Loader, I mean, he should have done better at Reading, but ultimately his career ended for Reading career ended for reasons kind of outside of our fans' control and his performances' control. So Ovi Ejaria takes his first HRK Underachiever Award of the year. Let's hope it is his last as well. Let's go to Golden Moment then. Better times ahead. Previous winners include beating Bradford in the FA Cup semi-final. No, it was quarterfinal. What was I talking about? Quarterfinal Bradford FA Cup win. Beating Fulham in the playoffs. Last year it was beating Bournemouth 3-1, which briefly put us in like proper promotion contention back in the day. We've already had some nominations then. Ollie Adam saying the Sheffield United winner with Tom McIntyre in the last minute, having only just conceded an equaliser to a team in the playoffs. The Swansea equaliser, also Tom McIntyre, is what Ben is saying. And Sim has said the Legends game. So Ross, where are you throwing the Golden Moment this year?
I'm gonna agree with Ben. I'm gonna go with the Swansea game, because it is always funny when lightning strikes twice in the space of a week. It's watching the Sheffield United game, watching Tom McIntyre go from 0 to hero in 3 minutes. That was awesome. Obviously, that was such a great moment. And important to us staying up. More important in the end than the Swansea point turned out to be. But football is weird. Sometimes Morocco make it to the semi-final of a World Cup. Sometimes Kidderminster beat Reading. So sometimes the game throws up these odd results like the Sheffield one, but for it to happen twice in a week started to feel like something funny was going on. But that's a great feeling. It was just a lot of fun to watch and just fun to be part of. It was probably the first time since the protests in January and everything that it was really fun to be a Reading fan again for a few days there.
Westy, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Sheffield United and obviously Swansea, great games. And like I said, with the local lads scoring late equalisers and winners, it's a shame you can't bottle that feeling, because like I said, it is great when that happens. But for me, I think the best moment we've had this season, again, a little bit left field, would be Blackburn at home. I think at the time they were top, or they were second, certainly at the top of the league. I think Reading's performance that night was the best I've seen them play under Ince, and probably the best I've seen them play for quite a few seasons, where they gave everything. They scored 3 goals. They kept a clean sheet, and I think everyone who went to that match come out of that game thinking, do you know what? I think this is going to be a good season for us, because they showed in that moment everything that was good about them. So for me, I'm going to go for the Blackburn at home, the 3-0 win.
Yeah, no, that was a really enjoyable game, which is rare, as we've spoken about this season. And yeah, it just all came together, didn't it? Because they were top of the league, and Reading just kind of punctured that and showed that we were a bit of a serious team as well, which was great fun. I've gone for the Sheffield United game, and this is going to take the award as well, for the fact that I just remember it's one of the away games I went to last season. I remember being in the stand just thinking, oh, well, if I'd have taken a point before the game, you go through that process, don't you, with a late equaliser, convincing yourself that you're happy with it. And to be fair, with Sheffield United, wouldn't have ruined my day or anything like that. But to then go and steal the last minute winner, I just remember I think it's Baba Barman put the free kick in. And I said, that's a good free kick, that is. And you can piece it together in your mind, the knockdown and everything. And yeah, after that, it's just sheer adulation, isn't it? And pandemonium, which is what you live for as a football fan. So the Sheffield United game takes it. For the golden moment for 2022 in the Tilehurst podcast, let's go to the worst moment. Previous winners include losing 6-1 to Birmingham, losing 4-1 to Fulham, losing 4-0 to Ipswich, and having 6 points deducted was last year's worst moment. Ben has said the Coventry game and the 150th anniversary. He's just said everything associated with that wasn't a moment to be proud of. Myself and Ollie and Sim and Adam have all gone for the Kidderminster game. I mean, we spoke about it earlier on, so I don't think we need to go into too much more detail for why we thought that was just awful moment, really. Westy, are you going to throw in any different nominations?
Yeah, I'm going to say I didn't really. I must have blotted it out of my mind, that Coventry 150th anniversary. It was a borderline shambles the whole day. To be fair, it was so not in keeping with 150th year anniversary. I don't think they could have done a worse job all round the club. But mine is the Kidderminster game as well, just because you can't be getting beaten by sides are quite a long way down the divisions and not having the best of seasons and look so ordinary. So for me, yeah, it would have to be the Kidderminster game.
Ross, any others?
I'm going to go with the weekend incident when Liam Moore was stripped of the captaincy. That was the point when I really started to worry about what on earth was going on behind the scenes. That was when I started to want to believe some of the worst rumors that we were hearing about the backroom and things like that, because regardless of what was going on there, and I'm sure Liam Moore did some things that, you know, we might not have been thrilled with, that is not the right way to go about things, clearly. And how the rest of the team were meant to feel about that, I don't know. I just don't know how that decision was made and how anyone came to the conclusion that might be taken positively, even with the fan, distaste maybe for Liam Moore from a lot of areas at that time. Just think that was completely botched, really unfair on Liam Moore, and just really worried me at that point. So I'd have to go with that moment.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Well, the winner of the worst moment of 2022 is losing 2-1 to National League North team Kidderminster in the third round of the FA Cup. And actually, like we said earlier, it not even feeling like that much of a surprise or that big a news, really. It was just one of those days you want to bury your head in the sand and pretend you're not a Reading fan, which, I really don't think come along very often, even at the worst of times. Comedy moment then, we've got a couple more of these to go. Comedy moment previous winners include our Thai owner's song, "We Are the Royals" or something like that. I can't remember the exact. It kind of pops up on Twitter every couple of years as like a bit of a funny one. How Robson Kanu scoring against Belgium in Euro 2016 was that year's comedy moment. Da Young running on the pitch after one of the games in 2021 was the winner there. And actually, Da Young down the pub before the Wigan game is Sim and Ben's nomination for this year's comedy moment. We've had Adam and Ollie as well saying just been Paul Ince, the video, if you remember that being launched on social media for you guys, went on I can't even remember the name of the app that you can pay Paul Ince to send you a message. And that was a moment, wasn't it, Ross?
Oh yeah, no, that was a great. That's mine, for sure. I very much enjoyed all of the "you've just been Paul Inst" memes, and people getting Inst, and your weekly Insting, and all of these things, and that was obviously all over Twitter and the Championship subreddit and various things like that, and it was just a lot of fun to log into the championship subreddit after another victory, another unexpected victory often, and the entire feed would just be full of pictures of Paul Ince, saying that another team had been Paul Ince. I think that when a meme is so good that the rest of the championship fans want to hop onto it, then it's a funny moment.
Yeah, I think I think that the best part about that was that he just read it out like so deadpan seriously, like he didn't really realize what it was that he was reading. It was just it was so surreal, but yeah, very, very 2022, I'd have to say. My comedy moment, an honourable mention this is for Orient Island's just complete embarrassing moment in the final game of the season against Luton, where not even the Sky Sports cameras were looking at him as he casually dropped the ball and had the Luton player behind him score. I feel like it's a comedy moment because fundamentally it just didn't matter to us, and it really kind of summed up the season in about 3 seconds. And yeah, it almost happened at the World Cup actually as well, didn't it? Which was a hell of a moment in the Portugal game, wasn't it, against Ghana? So yeah, the Nyland moment for me. But yeah, just being Paul Ince is the comedy moment of 2022. Right then, we are going into the Pavel Pogrebniak Most Missed Award, which actually has a lot of contenders this year. Lucas João has won it for the last 2 years, basically because of when he's got injured. Adam Federici, Danny Williams, Lewis Baker have also claimed the award previously. Ross, who are you thinking is the most missed player for this year?
Oh, I was leaning Rinomota just based on my own personal feelings, but I think that if we're thinking about who would help the team the most right now, if we took Jeff Hendrick out and replaced him with John Swift, we might genuinely be a playoff team right now. Just that little bit of creativity in breaking down blocks and trying to chase a game. I know Swift didn't always show up every single game, but there's nobody in the team who can provide the same kind of creativity that Swift used to be able to. So yeah, we're really missing him in the middle of the park.
Yeah, I'm going to have to say John Swift as well, as did Ollie and Adam. Ben sent in Rinomota. Sim said Felipe Araruna, which is a hell of a thing to miss because I'm not sure I ever saw him play for Reading. Westy, it's interesting that no one said Josh Laurent yet.
No, again, at the start of the season, I think all those three midfielders would have been well on the list. I know with Swift probably going to win it, but I don't miss any of them. I don't miss any of them three midfielders. I was never a big Swift fan. Yeah, he's got a creative spark, but like I said, he went missing for 3 or 4 months of the season and had a purple patch and then disappeared again. No doubt in the boy's talent, and like I said, we do miss his goals to a certain extent, but I thought at the start of this year we'd miss all them three in midfield, but I think our midfield's better now than it was when them three were in it. So I haven't gone for any of them. Again, I've gone a bit left field. I'm going to say Liam Moore for a number of reasons that have already been discussed by Ross. He hit the nail on the head earlier about being stripped of the captaincy. I think, rightly or wrongly, I thought Liam Moore was been fit all season. He would have been an asset to, especially with the injuries we've had at the back. And I just think that it was just a nasty sort of sour taste for everybody. It reminds me of when Mills flipped us the bird quite a few seasons ago now. It's just like that turn from being sort of hero to zero in that second. I think we've missed a lot from Liam Moore being sort of sidelined. Probably not as much as Swift, but just as an argument, I think Liam Moore has been my vote for the most missed.
No, that's fair enough. I go for Swift because I think that it is the goals from midfield, and I guess Tom Ince does effectively play that same role, but the two of them together as a kind of maybe even a 3-4-3 just off of Carroll or something like that, I think that would be a really interesting front line that Reading could be having. So yeah, John Swift does, with 3 nominations, take the Pavel Pogrebniak Most Missed Award. I'm not sure we really miss Pavel Pogrebniak anymore, but I guess there's no one else who's kind of claimed that crown yet. So it is that he continues with it. And the final award of the night, then final award of the 2022 podcast Christmas special, is the breakout prediction, the player that we tip to go and have a great next 12 months. And we've not always been particularly good at this. Royston Drenthe won it in 2013. And he had a great career, didn't he, after that 2013 season. Dominic Samuel, Jonathan Bond, Yaku Meite's done all right, Omar Rich has done all right, Daniel Loda's done all right, Michael Elise's done all right. So those years we were good. Last couple of years, Dejan Tetek and Femi Aziz, who I don't really think let's be honest, haven't done anything. I'm going to go for Nelson Abbey. It's a bit of a difficult one, this one, because there aren't loads of academy players that I really think are going to do it. Adam's also gone for him. I think it's too soon for Tuma. Basil Tuma's time will come. The Eton educated winger that we is absolutely rapid, who probably won't come forward in 23, but maybe in 24. Ollie has said Kian Levy. Rashawn Scott for Ben, and Jay Senga is what Sims said. Westy, any academy players that you think might make a bit of a splash in 22 or 23 even?
Yeah, never left field one. I've seen him play a number of times. I think he's going to be a very good player one day, and that's Strickland. I think he's had a couple of games in the first team. I just think he looks the part of a big, strong, either defensive midfielder or centre back. And I think that Strickland, if he doesn't break out this year, it'll be next. So I'm going to vote for him again, left field, but he's a good player.
I'm going to throw. I wonder. I don't know if I'll change my vote, because then it'll just become a farce if we all have different players. But John Clark has been particularly impressive a couple of times when he's been in and around the team, friendlies and Carabao Cups and whatnot. So he could be one to look out for. We signed him from Port Vale in the summer, didn't we? Ross, who have you gone for your breakout prediction?
I've gone for John Clark as well. I see him around the team a lot, and sort of like in the positions that I remember Holmes being in, 3 or 4 seasons ago. And so I just wonder if with the injuries at centre back being what they are, I don't necessarily, even if Scott Dan is able to play between now and the end of the season, don't see him making it all the way to the end of the season. So I think that there may be a chance for John Clark somewhere in the next year. Just a quick note on one of the previous winners, Jonathan Bond in 2015, obviously never really got it going for us in the end, but he is now a regular starter for the LA Galaxy over here in America. So he has at least nailed down a starting role finally, and a nice location to live, I suppose.
Yeah, that's not a bad life, is it? Being the first choice goalkeeper of LA Galaxy. I would have taken that if you'd have offered it to me when I was 12 years old or whatever. I'll move over to Clark then. I'll join you on that. And John Clark is our official breakout prediction for 2023. Congratulations, and hopefully you're more Elise than Tetek. I think it's fair to say. Right, we've got about 5 minutes left of the show. Let's go into a little bit of preview and talk about what's coming up to round off the year.
Be loud and be proud and back the boys and make some noise. Come on, you Oz!
Shout out to this week's podcast sponsor, ZCZ Films, showing that age is no barrier to being a hula hoop.
Right, welcome back to the final part of the show for the Tilehurst podcast. I say 5 minutes left because that's exactly what we've got left on the Zoom call. And it's far too late for us to be faffing around joining new links again. So let's have a quick look ahead at what's coming up for Reading. Swansea at home, 5:15 is December 27th. We're on TV for that one. So there's no Boxing Day game. We're then away to Norwich on the 30th, 7:45 kickoff. And away to West Brom on 3 p.m. January the 2nd. And Westy, that's a bit of Swansea are in bad form, I think it's fair to say, but they could still very easily turn us over like they did earlier in the season. And West Brom have won quite a few games now. It's a bit of a tough run, isn't it?
It's a very tough run, and as you know, we're not very good when we're on TV in general, so I'll fear for that one straight away. Norwich away, let's face it, I can't see them getting much out of that. We don't historically, and Norwich will be thereabouts at the end. And West Brom have already beat us. So it is a real tough 3 games, I think, for Reading. And hopefully we can get some points out of them. But if they lost all 3, I don't think we'd be shocked.
Yeah, Ross, if I offered you 1 win, maybe a draw, I'd certainly take 4 points out of that. 3 you might as well take. I guess Norwich, we know that Norwich are going to be up there, aren't they? So it's not a free hit because they're not brilliant. But at the same point, it's not if you lose it, no one really comes away from that furious, depending circumstances.
That's the thing. At the end of the day, if you get one smash and grab 1-0 win out of those three, then you're better off than 2 good performances and 2 points. So I guess, yeah, if we get 3 points out of it, I'll be happy. Just got to keep the points coming in, especially when it gets to these tough stages.
Yeah, I suppose my big fear out of those 2 away games in particular is that our penchant for having a 4-0 defeat might emerge, particularly with having to play so many games back to back. But it's always plausible that we do something special in this. So let's lay on a Swansea prediction then to end off the show. The prediction league, as it stands now, Adam was the only one to get the Birmingham defeat. So at the halfway mark, Ben leads on 15 points, Handbags 14, Sim 13, Westy 12, Adam's on 10, I'm on 8 points, and Ollie's on 5. So Westy, what are you going to say for a Swansea prediction?
I'm going to go for a win because I think it's the most winnable game out of them 3. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 win to Reading.
Ross, what do you think for the Swansea game?
Yeah, I'm with him on the win. I'm just going to go for a 2-0 rather than a 2-1.
Well, I'm going to go for. I think is we don't ever draw games, so predicting a draw is a little bit pointless. I'll go for a 1-0 defeat. I'll be a bit different. I mean, I need to get some points up, and I may as well give myself a 1% reason to enjoy us getting beat, if it happens. But then I do think we'll pick up one of Norwich or West Brom. I think we'll put in a good performance one of those games, and then we'll get something out of this period. So we'll have to see. We will be back. I will aim to do us a podcast between the Swansea and Norwich game. We usually have this period off, but we've had so long off with the World Cup that I'll pull my finger out and do a Swansea podcast hopefully after that game, potentially on the 28th, depending on who is around to join me for that one. So all that's left really is to say thank you, Westy, for coming on. It's been a pleasure having you on for the award show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think I've not been on an award show for about 5 or 6 years, so it's nice to get the call. So thank you for that. And it's been great meeting you as well, Ross, although it be virtual.
Fantastic.
Yeah, Ross, always great to have you on, mate.
Yeah, thanks very much. Nice to meet you, Westy, and always great to talk Reading. Happy holidays, everyone.
Absolutely. We go into what has been, as I said at the top of the show, it's always really interesting being a Reading fan because there don't tend to be many dull years, do they? And at the end of the day, we've come out of this one stronger than we started it, or at least that's the plan with the final 2 games ahead of us. So we'll hopefully be back in the next few days. Enjoy your holidays, enjoy some time off if you get it. And if you're working, hopefully we're the sort of thing that can accompany you during that, and you'll have a good time with us. You've had a good time with us as well during the award show and everything. So that leaves me just to say Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and come on you arse.
Just